Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. My name is Joel Goldberg, and as I'm recording this on a Monday at the very end of September, this'll run in early October, which means that my baseball season, the regular season, is over. 17th season in the books, and so fun to watch a team go from 106 losses to the playoffs. A lot of lessons learned there. So I'm still fresh off of that in my head, and of course the podcast keeps rolling year long, the speaking and all of that good stuff. And so super excited to get rolling today with my guest, who really more a businessman and entrepreneur, but always an athlete, and it all ties together here in a really interesting way. A quick shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. Love partnering with them. Got some stuff going on this off season as well, and so happy to partner with them on this podcast. If you're looking for a job, looking to be placed, looking for resources, whether you're in Kansas City or anywhere around the country for that matter, check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. Today's a good connection. I'm joined by a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur who is proof you don't need resources to become great, only yourself and your own convictions. His name is Dre Baldwin, the pro baller turned founder and CEO of Work on Your Game, Inc., whose hustle broke all the rules. Now the business influencer has created something that's more than a mental framework. It's a roadmap in reverse to separating winners from the other guys and the key to dominating your game, whatever the field, court, or profession you play. I am happy right now to bring into the podcast from his home in Miami, or office, or probably both, Dre Baldwin. Dre, how are you?
I'm doing excellent, Joe. Hopefully I can live up to that introduction. But I do want to tell you, I still work out every day. So let's not drop that athlete part.
No, well, I did say once an athlete, always an athlete, right? And versus like the guys like me that are like, I hope I can get it in today. But look, there's some differentiators there. Maybe we'll motivate everyone where we're going. Look, I do know this. I do know this much, like having been around pro athletes my whole life, or at least my whole professional life, that there are two directions you go when you're done. You either say, all right, I'm done and I'm never doing a thing again, and I'm going to eat a lot and I'm not going to work out a lot and I paid my dues. And there are other guys that you could just look at them and say, they are never, ever stopping. And I guess you're that guy in the midst of all of it, that making sure that workout is part of the daily routine. But I'm going to guess too that for a guy that is driven as you and a guy that is producing as much as you are, that you are very focused on the court, off the court, however you want to say it, in the gym, out of the gym. How locked in are you every day?
It's a great question. And yes, you're right about I am that latter group of guys who never stop working out. Yeah. And as far as what you just asked, that's a great question, because it's something that I think about constantly, just making sure that I'm staying locked in and focused on what needs to be done and just trying to win every minute of the day. So winning every minute is not about beating anybody else, but make sure each moment I'm doing what I'm actually supposed to be doing and following through on my own process.
That's so good. And by the way, it's why I love, and I think you do too. I mean, we're just meeting each other, but why I love sports as a teaching tool, whether you are a former athlete or whether you're someone that talks about it like myself, because businesses like sports, it's one of the reasons why I think baseball is such a great teaching tool. And I don't know, like we could sit there and debate which sport is the hardest. I think that's always kind of silly. The elite level athletes are great no matter what. And, if you teach an elite level athlete to get on skates and learn how to skate, they could probably play some form of hockey. And, if they started at a young age. But my point is that it takes that discipline every single day. And I think that's where it's so productive or instructive for business, because you can't just pay attention to it every now and then, right? You can't just pay attention to your body or your diet every now and then. It's every single day. How long have you been wired like that?
For which part?
The dedication, the everyday, again, I think that for you, sports and business are maybe one and the same. I'm guessing that the effort that has made you successful off the court is no different than what you did on the court, or some similarity to it.
Yeah, so Joe, I would say probably around age 14, which is when I really got into basketball as the chosen sport, because I wasn't that good when I started. So I would just go to the park every day with my ball and just practice by myself. And that's how I started to develop some ability. Didn't really have any tangible thing to show for it till about 4 or 5 years later, but that's where it started. So it's been ever since then. So I'm not quite 30 years yet, but on the way.
Well, and it seems to me like there is a trend that has followed you, or that you created every step of the way of proving, whether it be proving somebody wrong or whether it be defying the odds, right? I mean, it's that kind of classic walk-on mentality of, if you don't want me, I'm going to show you that I should be here. Sounds like that's what began in those parks, on the basketball court, by yourself. Hey, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to do it myself. Is that still true to this day?
There's a little bit of that, and at the same time, funny enough, was what you said is accurate if you're looking from the outside in, but I never considered myself an underdog. Interestingly enough, even though everything that, if you just went through my story, especially as an athlete, this guy definitely was an underdog, but I never looked at myself that way. I always looked at it as, they don't even know that I'm there. So it's not, I don't know what you call that. The invisible dog is what I actually was, because nobody knew I was there. So I finally made the high school team. Then I sat on the bench. You still didn't know I was there. Then college, nobody was checking for me. I walked into a gym and I happened to be good enough to make it there. Then I go to a Division III school and happen to be good enough to play there. And then when I went to play pro, again, nobody was checking for me. So it's not like they said, Dre has a chance, but it's a small chance. It was, nobody's mentioning my name. So I just had to kind of come from outside the room and just get in the room in the first place. So that's why I always did have the mentality, though, that, okay, if nobody's checking for me, let me just position myself to get an opportunity to show what I can do. Now, if everybody is better than me once I get in there, then I'll just say, okay, this is just not, I shouldn't be on the team because I'm just not good enough. But once I could see the other players out there who were allegedly better than me or ahead of me, I said, okay, if I can get an opportunity to just play against them, then I can prove something. So that's the way I always looked at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think that you're basically saying, once they see me, once I get an opportunity, I'll show them. But it was really, really in your hands, right? I mean, it to me, it's almost like you had to open your own doors. And a lot of times people wait for that. And I always say, like, I'll just take TV as an example. Was I the best at TV? Certainly not when I got in, and I don't know what I am right now. I've been in it for 30 years, so something, I guess, has gone right. It's very subjective, but I think that if I didn't go knocking on doors, and literally and figuratively with that, if I didn't try to open those doors myself, they weren't going to open. But once they did, it was up to me to prove that I was able to be there. How much of that? Two parts of this. One, how much of that was just you opening doors, and then the follow up to that is just, was there a chip on your shoulder, or was it just, no, I believe in myself and it'll work out?
It was both. So knocking on doors, absolutely, because in the sports world, usually the best athletes get identified pretty young. So if you're not one of those who gets identified early, then you either drop out of the game is one option. Another option is you keep playing, but you know that there's a ceiling on how far you're going to go. Maybe I'll play in high school, maybe I'll play at some small college, but you have no ambition of going to the next level. And then there's the people who, again, you try to create an opportunity for yourself because you believe you can play at that level, but nobody's asking you to, or you believe you can perform at whatever level, but you don't have anybody checking for you, asking you to, or offering you an opportunity. So it was that. And then as far as the chip on the shoulder, I mean, that would come in, of course, because of sports and it's competitive. Not everybody can make it. I mean, sports is the closest thing to a meritocracy that you get out here in this world, where the best performers usually end up at the top. So yeah, there was a chip on the shoulder that, hey, I think I'm better than this guy, but he's in the game, I'm out of the game. So let me prove that I can be better than that guy. Even if I'm not playing directly against him, I'm gonna put my resume up against him at one point. So it was a little bit of both of those.
All right. So it sounds to me like really good frame of mind in believing in yourself and understanding that once you're there, you're going to show them, and you just have to get there. And I guess so much of that enabled you to succeed on the court, and we'll backtrack and go there in a moment, has really, I don't know, been a foundation, laid the groundwork for the success that you're having now. I love when I have a guest on this podcast that I can't really, I mean, we tried in the intro, but that we can't really define by saying they do this, meaning fill in the blank with one word. I mean, like, maybe that's a little bit true for me. I don't know. I mean, I'm identified certainly within Kansas City in this region as a baseball broadcaster, but then I get beyond that, and it's the podcast, it's the book, it's the, on and on and on, the speaking, and with you, I feel like you've got like a million things going on. How would you define your profession at this point? Because I'm wondering when you sleep.
Well, I do agree with that I don't fit into a box of any one particular thing, unless you just want to say entrepreneur. You can say that, or professional. Those I'll take. But as far as how do I define what I do? Well, I tell people that we help people with 3 specific things: high level performance done consistently to produce results, because we're in a results-based business. And then if you ask, well, how do you do that? Then I say we take the tools to help athletes get to the top 2% of the sports world, and we translate those tools over to the business and professional world. And so that's what I do.
So within all of that, podcasts, books, speaking, just to mention a few, how did this all start for you? And then, I mean, that's not even mentioning the content creation. And I think that you were like, we're in a day and age right now where everybody's trying to put out content, some of it good, most of it not. Everybody's racing to figure out the algorithms. Everybody's racing to get their name out there on YouTube, on TikTok, and on and on and on. And that's constantly evolving too. But I feel like a lot of people are just starting now. That is not the case for you. Tell me about just the content that you're putting out there, and at least to me, it looks like a massive amount of production.
Well, thank you. I think where it started, well, I know where it started was in 2005. That's when I first put content out. I was blogging at first, still blogging, but the blog didn't really pick up. I didn't pick up an audience from blogging. I put a video on YouTube, which was actually footage that was from an exposure camp that I went to, which is basically somewhere you go when you're an athlete, you want to play, but nobody knows you. So you go there to get yourself exposed. I played pretty well there, which is really how I got started playing pro ball. And that footage was on this thing called a VHS tape. Joel, you may remember those.
I'm old enough, yes.
Yeah, so the VHS tape, I took it to an audio visual store. They put it on a data CD, and I uploaded that footage to YouTube. And that's where I started to build an audience. And it was just basketball players probably for the first 5 years, for up till about 2009, 2010. And while I was doing that, I was still playing ball overseas and just putting videos out sporadically, because there wasn't really any type of business benefit to be gained from having a bunch of people watching you on the internet at this time. It is now, but back then that wasn't the thing. But a lot of things happened around that 2009, about 2011 time period. One was I found myself unemployed from basketball. So I had even more time on my hands, and I was looking for an opportunity to combine basketball with the internet and making money. So that's when I started to look more deeply at what was available. Google purchased YouTube. So now you can make money from putting videos on YouTube. The more videos you put out, the more they get seen, the more money you make. I found out about creating and selling products on the internet, which is really how I really got started as an entrepreneur, selling $5 training programs to basketball players. Start one with dribbling, one with shooting. Self-publishing became a thing. So now you don't need to go through a traditional publisher. You can write your own book. And now a whole bunch of people are starting to notice, hey, publishing stuff on the internet is actually a thing, and people who do it are actually cool. And I was already doing it. I already had a 5-year runway at this point. So now I could lean in more to what I was doing. And I started putting content out every single day in that 2009 frame. And I have not missed a day since. So that's how I got started.
Which is remarkable. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the workouts too. And when you were talking about how dedicated you are to the fitness end of things, to the being active, that those two seems like they go hand in hand, right? It's almost like that's a non-negotiable for you. I'm not missing a day of content. I'm not missing a day of workout. And I'm guessing that's easier for you. Like you either have that or you don't, but that doesn't mean it's easy every single day, right? Like, how do you push through the days where it just doesn't feel like you have it? That's not just an athlete question. You know, like the best athletes find a way to grind through when they're not at 100%. That's true in every sport. How long did we talk about Michael Jordan and what he was able to do with the flu? In baseball, we say it all the time. The best starting pitchers are the guys that somehow find a way to get it done when they don't have their best stuff, because you're not usually at 100%. Isn't that true in the gym and with the content and what you're doing?
Absolutely. So several things here, and it's almost like you set me up with that question, but we didn't plan this because it's the perfect answer to it. So the first thing is, when it comes to the content, the good thing about content is that you can create a whole bunch of it at once and then you can schedule it. So it's not like you have to go and write an article every day if you don't want to. You can write 10 articles one day and not write again for 10 days if you want to. But if you want to keep the sword sharp, you have to have a consistent process for what you're doing. But when it comes to content specifically, because of technology, we can batch, create, and then schedule it to come out. That's one thing. So I do create content damn near every day, but I do also use the tool of batching. Now, when it comes to working out, you cannot batch your workouts. You can't do 10 workouts on one day and then skip the next 10 days. It's not possible. So you have to show up every single day. And that question that you asked there, how do you show up on the days when you don't really have it? We actually have a whole framework for that. It's called the third day. So this is why I said this sounds like a setup question, but it wasn't. He just asked. All right. So the third day is that day when you realize that the thing that you signed up for is not one big party. All right. You don't physically feel good. You don't mentally feel good. You didn't sleep well the previous night. It's hot outside. It's cold outside. It's raining. You don't feel like dealing with whatever it is that you have to do. But as a professional, you are obligated to show up and deliver. And what the third day is about is the decision that you make. It's not about the occurrence itself, because the occurrence happens to everybody. And I would think with a sport like baseball, where, I mean, in the course of 6 months, you're playing, you get maybe 30 days off, 6 months straight.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are days when, of course, right. And there are days you won't feel like playing. Maybe you're bored. Maybe the team you're playing is bad. Maybe the team you're on is bad. Whatever's going on. You got all kinds of things going on in your life. But as a professional, what I tell pros is that no one should ever know which day is the third day for you. If they just looked at your performance, no one should know what's the day that you didn't really feel like being at work, because your performance should be consistent every single day. Now, of course, you may have days where you feel amazing and you just have a great performance, but your everyday performance should be pretty consistent to where I can point out, oh, that was the day that Joel didn't feel like being at work. Or that's the day that Dre didn't feel like working out. I can tell by the way he performed that day. It should be consistent over and over and over again. And that's the discipline. That's having a process and a system that you follow. And it's also the mental toughness, because there are some days when if you could, you would take that day off. You would stay in bed. You would just go to the mall or go to the beach. But you still have to show up and do your job, because as a professional, you're doing something as a main paid occupation. And as soon as you take a check, you have an obligation. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, I think it's the mall here in Kansas City and the beach down in Miami for you. But anyway, right. Nicer option down there, unless you like the mall, I guess. All that resonates with me. I love that so much. And, again, I'm not performing like an athlete, but if I can't get in front of that camera and bring the energy every single day, even when I'm not at my best, then it's not going to work. Certainly not for baseball, right, where we're on 6 to 7 days a week for 6 months. I want to go back to where it started, to Philadelphia. A place that I love, that I grew up about 20 minutes from before moving to the Midwest. What was before you started shooting around and working on that basketball game at 14 years old in the park and laying the groundwork for the future? What was life like for you as a young kid growing up in Philadelphia, and what were the aspirations?
Sure. Well, let me ask you, where outside of Philly were you? What town were you in?
I was outside in South Jersey. So first off, everybody on the Philadelphia side, well, you're not from Philadelphia, you're from New Jersey.
Tri-state area.
Yeah, tri-state area. Morristown, New Jersey, which when I grew up there, now I think like a lot of the athletes, I remember when we moved away, Randall Cunningham was moving in there and all that old, tricentennial town. I remember the plaques on some of the homes, like on Main Street, that were 1600s. But when I moved there were 5 minutes from my house, there were farms and all of that. It was like a different world than it is now. All that's been knocked down. I mean, we're talking over 30 years ago. All that's been knocked down, and now it's totally different. But we're like 20 minutes from Center City.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of athletes in Philly will live in that area, but I know the town.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, my two parents were just all about making sure that their kids, I have one sister, making sure that their kids got a good education, because my dad never went to college. We would ask my dad, what school did you go to? He would say the School of Hard Knocks. Right? So he didn't go to college, graduated high school, and he went into the workforce. And my mom is an educator, and she was in college trying to finish her degree when she had two kids at 21 years of age. So by 21, she had two kids. She dropped out of college to raise her kids. She didn't get her degree till I was in college, so 20 years later. So her whole thing was, I want my kids to at least get through the college part so they have more of a head start into life than I did, which my sister and I both went to college and graduated. So their whole thing was just go to school, get good grades, get a degree, get yourself a nice job, and hopefully you do a little bit better than mother and father did. So that was their whole thing. They weren't really so much about playing sports. They weren't trying to make me into an athlete. My sister is not an athlete. And my dad is into sports. Like, he would watch, but my dad's like 5'8". I'm 6'4". So he wasn't a basketball player. And if he picked a sport, his sport is actually baseball. He coaches youth baseball still to this day. So he's a baseball guy, not a basketball guy. So for me, anytime I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do in school, then I would get sports taken away from me. I don't know if parents are even doing that these days, because they're all trying to make their kids into athletes, but that's how it was. You know how it was back then. So if you don't do your stuff at school, then you can't do any extracurricular, regardless of whether you're trying to make a career out of it or not. So that's where the discipline came from.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, it did lay the groundwork for you. I was reading that you have described yourself, or did describe yourself, as Steve Urkel-like. Is that fair?
Yes, this was about, so I was born in 1982. So I used to wear corrective lenses. I still wear lenses, but contacts. But I wore glasses from about age 5 to about age 10. So what's that? About 87 to about 92. And during that time period, there's a very popular TV show called Family Matters. And the key character was a guy named Steve Urkel. So anyone over the age of 35 knows what I'm talking about. And Steve Urkel was a geek and a nerd back when being a geek and a nerd was not cool. Nowadays, it's kind of cool to be a geek and a nerd, because those are the tech guys making all the money. Yeah. But back then, it wasn't cool. So people would compare me to Steve Urkel, because I was this young Black kid with these thick bifocal glasses when he was maybe the most popular person on TV besides, Oprah and Phil Donahue. So yes, that's correct.
That's pretty good. So I don't know. Are you still a nerd?
I'm a closet computer geek, is what I say. But I think because of my athletic career and working out all the time and what I do now, I don't think I would be accepted by the geek community. But I am a closet geek. Well,
you can sort of play to both crowds, I guess. And it is possible to be a quote unquote geek or nerd and an athlete.
Yes.
It actually happens more than people realize. It just isn't always something that everybody talks about. I think that's fun, because it's just, I don't know. I think it shatters some stereotypes a little bit, and maybe it doesn't shatter them, but lets people into to a world where, yes, not every athlete is quote unquote the dumb jock, and not every geek or nerd is that there's just more to it. So I like that a little bit. So when you start playing basketball, and then you get told no pretty much every step of the way, or you're not being noticed, maybe you're not being told no, you're opening those doors, as we talked about before. How does that end up getting you to playing pro basketball and overseas? I know I'm speeding this up here a little bit, but as a 14-year-old kid, you're not sitting there thinking, boy, one day I want to go play in Lithuania. But I'm guessing at a certain point, you're like, man, I'd really like to do this. How did you get there?
Yeah, so age 14, started playing. Didn't make the high school team till my last try, my senior year. I tried out every year, but only made it the senior year, and scored 2 points per game. So anyone who doesn't know sports, I tell them, if you play soccer or hockey, score 2 points a game, you're in the Hall of Fame. But in basketball, you're nobody. So getting out of high school, no college coaches were calling me or anything like that. So I knew I was going to go to college. As I already told you, my parents were about to go to school. So I knew I was going to college. And since I wasn't being recruited, I just figured whatever school I end up at, I'll just try out for the basketball team. Doesn't matter what school it was. I don't care if I end up at Duke. I would have tried out for the basketball team. Luckily, I went to Penn State. Abington was a branch campus of Penn State University, very small school. And the basketball team there is not some headliner program. So I was probably the most talented player on campus as soon as I walked on campus. because I was a late bloomer as a basketball player, Joel. So my game was still developing at age 18, whereas many of my peers by age 18, they had basically squeezed all the juice out of their fruit. So I was probably the most talented player. Wasn't the best performer, but I was the most talented player. After my freshman year, I got recruited actually to go to Penn State Altoona, which is a Division III, full-fledged Division III college in the Penn State system, which is where I finished out. Played there, didn't set the world on fire. And again, at a Division III school that doesn't produce pros, it's not like the scouts are coming to our games. So when I got out of college, I knew I wanted to play pro, but I knew I probably wasn't going to get drafted by the Knicks or the Lakers in the 2004 NBA draft. So I had a teammate who knew people who had played overseas. So he's the one who kind of bent my ear to it and said, okay, well, look, Dre, we can play overseas, but this is what we had to do because we're not known. So we need to go to an event like these things called exposure camps. You go to these camps, you pay to go to these events. These are not free. They're like casting calls, but you pay. And hundreds of players who think the same thing you're thinking. They think they're good enough to play, but they don't have an opportunity right now. They go there to better their chances. So this is a meat market. And you have to go there and perform, and these are short, like 2 days. So you pay, I paid $250, paid it in cash because I didn't have a bank account or a credit card at that time. In Orlando, Florida, drove from Philly to Orlando. It's about a 19-hour drive. Hopped out of the car at 9 a.m. Saturday morning and started playing. Couldn't do that now, but I could do it at age 23. And played pretty well at that 2-day event. Got a good scouting report, which was important because now I had a third party, a credentialed third party saying this guy is actually pretty good. And then I got that footage, which was the VHS tape. So that's the stuff that I leveraged. The next thing I had to do, because I need an agent. So, Joel, you know the sports world, that agents are basically the go-between between the players and the jobs. Now, again, I played well at this event, but I still don't have an agent and I did not have a job offer. So I started going on Google and looking up basketball agents. And if they had a phone number, I called them. I was cold calling basketball agents. Now, this sounds somewhat like it makes sense if you've been listening to the story, but what people who don't know the sports world may not understand is that agents usually call the players. Players don't call the agents. So usually if you're really good, let's say LeBron James, when he was coming out of high school to the NBA, the agents were calling him. He had to pick one. But I was calling the agents and hoping one of them picked me. So I called a bunch of agents, about 60 of them, 20 of them I got in touch with. They said, send me what you have. I'm making copies of my VHS tape in a double-decker VCR. So any Gen Zers listening to this, ask your parents or Google it. You want to know what these things are. Yes. And I'm sending these footages out in bubble mailers. I got those 20 agents I sent tapes to. One of them got back in touch and said, I'll represent you. He's the one who got me my first job in Kaunas, Lithuania. That was in the late summer of 2005.
Your story resonates so much with me for this reason. And I was never an athlete. I say that meaning that I played sports, but nobody was talking about it. And there was not going to be a path like yours. But getting into television was similar because everybody wanted to do it. If you can't play at a high level, you want to get in as a sports broadcaster. And I'm not just talking about sports. I mean, newscast. Like everybody was it's different nowadays because you don't have to go traditional television. You could be an influencer, which, by the way, the odds against that the odds on that aren't very good either. But there are different paths that happen with the evolution of time. But back then, to get on television, you took a resume tape and you sent a mailer because you weren't sending a YouTube link, and you hoped that they liked it. And every single one I sent out, I got a rejection letter for. And so it was either give up or find a different path of doing it. And so I started making phone calls. And I started telling them, I'm passing through town next week. Could I stop in to introduce myself and drop off a tape? I was never going to any of those towns until they said yes. But suddenly that's what opened up their eyes. And then it was up to me to get that job. So, your story, it resonates with me because you can't just sit back and wait for it. You have to take charge and do it if you believe in yourself. I don't even know if I believed in myself. I believed in the dream, and then I had to go work to achieve it. So anyway, just my little sidebar there of saying it totally makes sense. But even at that point, right, like you earn everything you're doing. You go over to Europe and you do all that. And then I guess at some point, like any athlete, by the way, you could stay in the gym till you're 95 years old, Dre. But at some point you stop competing like you were competing because Father Time never loses on that. But it seems to me as though you then took that, leveraged it into what you have right now. And that's what I want to talk about, your business and where that started and where it's at now.
Sure. So the business part started, well, as I mentioned, 2009. Phone's not ringing. And I found out, hey, there's a way you can actually leverage an audience on the internet. Actually, you don't even need an audience, but you can create a product, sell it on the internet. So I said, well, great. I'm on the internet all the time. And again, closet computer geek. So I started selling these $5 training programs I had an audience of basketball players. And one was for dribbling the ball, one was for shooting the ball, and $5 a piece. That's how we started. Good thing is I had a strong and growing audience of basketball players on YouTube. So I was selling these products in volume. I was selling them in volume every day. I was just make a video on YouTube and say, hey, if you want more of this, click the link in the bottom. And I did that for probably from 2009 to about 2013. That was a great hustle / business. I didn't even know what I was doing business wise. I would just make products, and I just kept making more little $5, $10, $20 products, making videos to be basically my lead magnet, and then selling. Same good thing is the phone didn't ring again. I kept playing pro. But when I started making these sales, Joel, I remember the first night I made the sale, I used to have the BlackBerry phone. You remember the Blackberries?
Of course.
Right. So when you got a text message or an email on a BlackBerry, there's a little red light that would blink. And it said, congratulations, you made a sale, $4.99. And when I made that first sale, I said to myself, I could do this for the rest of my life. Because as you mentioned, Joel, I can't jump 40 inches in the air forever. And I had always been thinking to myself, especially because of my background, this might be my last chance to play at the pro level. It was no guarantee I was going to keep playing. And at that moment, the phone had not been ringing. So when I made that sale, I said to myself, well, hey, I may not be able to play basketball forever by skill or by opportunity, but I can always take an idea out of my head, turn it into something real, put a price tag on it, and sell it. I created what we now know as intellectual property. I said I could do this forever. And I had more than 2 ideas. At the time, I only had 2 products. So that's when I just started making more of those products. I started making videos more intentionally because, again, Google purchases YouTube now. So now I'm making money from more videos. I make more money I make. Now I have these products that I'm making. I have this audience that is building. And again, this is working pretty well till about 2013, 14, when YouTube kind of changed the algorithm a little bit. So it didn't work as well. Good news is I made a good amount of money in that period just doing that. And then the books thing became a thing. And one other piece that leads to where we are now that's important was that about 2010, these players who were watching me on YouTube, eventually they would start getting curious about the person. Because mind you, it's not like no one was going to the internet in 2008 and typing in Dre Baldwin. Nobody knows who I am. I just happened to be a guy on YouTube who was putting out basketball stuff that seemed to be helpful for these players. So they just watched it because this is useful for me, not because I was the one doing it. And they would eventually ask questions about my background. Well, where'd you play at? What school did you go to? Did you play in high school? Did you play in college? Do you play pro now? How did you get on pro? So they would just start asking questions. I would share a little bit about my background. And eventually the players started asking questions about my mindset because it was obvious I could play basketball. And when they found out that I played at the pro level, yet here I am in this empty gym in Miami waiting for the phone to ring, they just started asking questions about what gets you to come to the gym every day and work out when you don't even know if you're going to get a chance. How do you get the confidence to perform in tryouts? Because I would get a lot of high schoolers who were with basketball tryouts. People don't understand. You got to practice all year for one day. And if you don't play good on that one day, you don't make the team. You got to do it all again for another year. So they would ask about that. Or why'd you keep trying when you had all these setbacks? And I started talking about mindset. So in 2010, I made this one video. I was in the gym when I recorded it, but I said, hey, everyone, what I'll do, this is a little selfie video. I'll just make this mindset video every week just to give you all a little piece about mindset because so many of you keep asking me. So I'll call this the weekly motivation. If you like it, I'll keep doing it. But if you don't want this, we'll just stick to the basketball. And the response was overwhelming. Dre, yeah, keep doing it. Talk about mindset. So I did the weekly motivation video, Joel, every Monday for 400 Mondays in a row. And several things happened there. First of all, was I developed my ability to articulate my thoughts. Because the more you speak out what's in your head, the better you understand it and the better you can explain it to other people. Secondly, the players who were watching me said, Dre, man, you sound like a philosopher or a college professor. The way you're explaining mindset is almost better than the way you break down basketball. Third thing, most importantly, well, at least when it comes to the question you're asking, was that people who didn't play basketball started finding me on YouTube. And they started saying, Dre, I'm not even a basketball player, but the way you're talking about mindset, this applies to me. And I work in IT, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a teacher. That stuff, that is what told me, Joel, that this mindset thing was not limited to just basketball players. It also told me that my way of thinking, because unlike with playing basketball, you can't see another person's mindset. So when I would start explaining these things, the reason I had never talked about it before, because I assumed everybody thought this way. But again, you can't see another person's way of thinking. So when I started explaining it and people started saying, wow, I've never heard anybody break down discipline that way. I never heard anybody explain confidence the way that you did. I realized, oh, this is unique. Not everybody thinks this way. So that's when I realized, okay, this mindset stuff alone is an entire business unto itself. And I came to find out that it actually is. So that's when I started doing that more intentionally. So by the time I stopped playing in 2015, I already had momentum going and talking about this stuff. I had a framework, I had an audience, and already had a good idea of what I wanted to do next.
I mean, it sounds to me like you're a guy that said, hey, I can leverage these basketball skills into helping other basketball players. And this is a unique way at a time where, I mean, now everybody's trying to do videos, right? I mean, everybody can go on a TikTok, everybody can go on a YouTube. And by the way, most aren't going to make it there. And that's fine. Like, give it a try. But sounds to me like there was an aha moment where you realized, wait a minute, I've got so much more than just basketball. There's a whole nother world here, and it's all connected. I mean, that had to have been really enlightening, reinvigorating. I don't know that you're a guy that needs any extra energy, but suddenly you have a whole audience that's never ending, right?
Yes, in a way, yes. And now, while I was still connected to basketball, because mind you, I kept playing until 2015, but it gave me an idea of what my exit rant would be from basketball, because I was always trying to figure what will I be when basketball's over, because I knew I didn't want to be a coach or a trainer or an analyst. So what can I do that is maybe not a basketball thing? So when I realized that mindset alone and just taking it from sports and giving it to people who didn't play sports was a thing that people actually value, that's when I said, okay, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
All right, so now you've got all the programs, and you've done 4 TED Talks, 33 books. You've got the classes, the university. Tell me about the university and everything that's going on, because as I said before, there is a lot. I haven't even mentioned the podcast, on and on and on. But tell me about the university and who you're working with. I mean, I guess again, it could be just about anybody, right?
Yeah, well, our focus is what you said is called Work on Your Game University. That's where we do all of our coaching, all of our consulting, our courses, speaking, et cetera, come from the university. And it's really taking those same things we talked about earlier, high level performance done consistently to produce results. So we do have a very eclectic group of people. We have business owners. We have people who are professionals working in corporate structures, food truck businesses, clothing businesses, brick and mortar businesses. Of course, we have coaches, speakers. We have some former athletes in there. We have people transitioning out of the government or transitioning out of military in our program. And the reason why we have such an eclectic group is because the principles that we've been talking about here, Joel, they are universal principles. So once people come to kind of hear me and experience me, we get people from all different places who want to work with us, because the structure and the framework of what we do can apply universally.
How much do you love all of this?
I don't even think about it. It's easy.
Yeah. You found your sweet spot. That's what it is. All right, let me get to my baseball themed questions. Okay. First one, biggest home run that you have hit professionally. What's been that big moment? As
a business person or athlete?
Whatever you want.
Well, it has to be getting the first contract, going to Lithuania in 2005.
And tell me about that experience. I mean, I don't think that most Americans, whether they're athletes, they're not, whatever it is, most don't get that chance to travel the way you got to. I mean, and to go to places like Lithuania. Okay, maybe somebody takes a vacation to England or whatever it is. But a lot of people will never even get to do that as well. You're not just getting to go visit, you're working, you're living there. What was that experience like?
Amazing. It was just amazing. It's surreal because many times I was there. I was 23 years of age at the time. And mind you, I just started playing basketball when I was 14. So 9 years later, here I am as a pro. And there were a couple other Americans in town as well. Some of them teammates, and there was another team in town. But you're just walking around in a foreign country and we're all tall. I'm 6'4". I was the shortest guy. So it was like 4 of us walking around. They're all taller than me. We're all black guys. So everybody knows we're there for the basketball. And you're in this foreign country with euros in your pocket, and everybody knows who you are. Everyone knows that you're a basketball player. And there's no better job than being a professional athlete. I tell people that all the time. I'm an entrepreneur now, and this is 10 times more work than it is to be a professional athlete. Athlete is the best job you could possibly have. So being in Lithuania, the other thing about it was the validation. I mean, barely making a high school team, playing at the small college where nobody has any ambitions. And I would bet most people around me, even my loved ones, probably looking at me with this basketball thing, like, when is he going to grow out of this? And then I went and made it to go play pro. So it was a high level of validation as well.
Really, really cool stuff, and a lot of lessons and inspiration there. Just thinking about you making it right against all of the odds. Second question, in terms of baseball themes, swing and a miss. You're going to have swings and misses along the way. What's the biggest swing and miss you've had, maybe in business or whatever? And what did you learn from it?
Man, it's hard for me to pick just one. I could write a whole book on swings and misses. So of all the 9 years playing pro ball, I played for a different team every year. I reached out to probably 900 teams or 900 times, not even 900 teams in a row. I reached out to the same teams over and over again. So I did much more reaching out than I did connecting. I told you I reached out to 60 agents. I signed with one agent. So in business, I've had many products that I put out that didn't really sell. I've had many people I reached out to who weren't interested in working with me, or we were never able to get in touch with them. So again, I could write a whole book on things that I missed on. The problem is nobody wants to read that book. They only want to read about the wins. But man, I've tried so many things that didn't work. I could go on and on. Yeah,
but there's something about the fear of failure or the ability to handle failure too. I mean, that again is in the baseball world, the best hitters fail 70% of the time.
That's right.
I mean, as you and I are recording this right now, I'm standing in the dugout in Atlanta yesterday with Hall of Fame third baseman George Brett, and he's one of the greatest third basemen of all time. Him and Mike Schmidt from the Philadelphia Phillies. By the way, I said to George the other day, I'm name dropping, but his is better. I said, hey, do you know that it's Mike Schmidt's 75th birthday today? He goes, oh, hold on, let me call him right now. Like he could just do that. But he said, I failed 70% of the time. He said, if I had 3,000 hits, which he did, a little over 3,000, that means that I was out 7,000 times. And so, and that's just part of the game. We don't handle failure very well. We're not wired for that, or it takes a lot of discipline. What do you say to all the people that, struggle with handling failure? Like I don't know if you struggle with handling it, but you managed it really well. I mean, there's a great lesson there to me in terms of not giving up. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So George Brett, I think this is him. He's the guy who ran out of the dugout over the pine tar. Okay. I'm making sure that's the right guy. Yeah. So George Brett, I do remember that. And as far as handling failure, I never considered it a failure. So when I reached out to 60 agents and 59 of them weren't interested in signing me for one reason or another, I didn't consider that a failure, because my mindset was I just need one person to believe. As long as I get one person to agree, then I'm good. And there's a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Ben Hardy and what's the other guy's name? Dan Sullivan. And one of the things that he talks about is that, let's say, for example, you're a speaker and you want to raise your fees from $25,000 to $50,000. Even if you say no to 10 offers at $25,000, you get one person to say yes at $50,000. You would think you lost, because 10 times 25,000 is $250K, but 50,000 times one is only 50,000. But that 50,000 is worth 10 times more than the $250K. Why? Because now you've raised yourself to another level and you set a new standard. Now, the only things you have to accept are the 50,000. The point being, you get one person to say yes to you, you just raise your level to you're a different level of individual because you got that one person to say yes. So I never looked at it as a failure. When I put out products that didn't sell, it didn't matter to me. Okay, this product doesn't sell. Well, let's figure out what product does sell. Let me put out another one. The good thing about putting out stuff that nobody pays attention to is that nobody knew. Nobody knows that you messed up. Only you know. So all you had to do is move on to the next one. So as a salesperson, I've always been a salesperson, Joel, and I understand that not everybody is going to buy your product. And as they say, I don't know if you have any experience in like network marketing, for example. I dabbled a little bit, and they say some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting next. And you just have to move on to the next one. Just like a baseball player. You can't dwell on the fact that you struck out twice already in the game because the team needs you to get on base this at bat. And you cannot dwell on the fact you hit two home runs in last night's game, because that has nothing to do with today's game. So you have to have a short memory in terms of your victories and your failures.
Yeah, that was the Royals message all year long. They wore T-shirts all year long from their manager with just the simple word today. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. Right. Nobody cares. Doesn't matter what's going to happen tomorrow. You got to plan some things out for sure. But and basketball terms, I just like referring it all to sports, but doesn't have to. But you miss a shot, you better get back and play defense. And,
That's right.
and you keep on going and going and going. Last baseball theme question, small ball, the little things that add up to big results. I think, in the baseball world, it's the bunts, it's the sacrifices and all of that. You could find it in everything. But for you in life and being successful, and I think you've already hit on a lot of these, but I'll let you sum it up. What is small ball to you?
Man, being punctual, being on time, having a process, respecting your own process, having a system for what you do, being highly disciplined, showing up for the things that you say that you're going to do, not only for other people, but also for yourself. And it starts to spill over, and people can read that off of you when you're a person who is competent and you got your stuff together. People can tell, even if they don't know you. They can just tell by the way that you conduct yourself and the way you carry yourself. So those have always been big things for me. And again, I hat tip to my parents. They instilled that in me from a young age.
Love that. All right, I've got 4 quick final questions as we round the bases. The first one, let's talk a little bit about those travels overseas. Did you have a favorite place either that you worked or that you visited? The beauty of Europe is that when you're over there, you can get to a lot of places easily. It's
Yes.
not like being in the United States. What was your favorite?
I'll have to cheat and give you 3. So Lithuania, first number 1, count as Lithuania because that was the first place. So it was the first memory.
Mm-hmm.
Second one is, believe it or not, Mexico. Even though Mexico is a third world country, it was very unpredictable what was going to happen in Mexico. So it was just an ongoing roller coaster ride being in Mexico. And the third one, Herceg-Novi, Montenegro. So that's a place that I played about 2008. And Herceg-Novi is right there on the water. So even in the winter, it only goes down to about 50 degrees, but it's a tourist town. So in Europe, that's a place people go like Miami for vacation. So beautiful place. Those top 3.
Cool stuff. Nobody could take those memories away. And what a unique experience to have all that. All right. Second question, as we round the bases, did I see that you once entered a hot dog contest?
Yeah, hot dog eating contest, but you might as well call it a hot dog contest. I didn't eat many.
I guess you could be a hot dog. In my mind, I'm still thinking about what's the name of the dude that
Kobayashi.
Oh yeah, he was the
Asian guy. The American guy is Joey Chestnut.
Joey Chestnut, who then got booted because of he wasn't there this year because of the brand or whatever.
Yeah,
I can't watch those because I think I'm going to throw up just watching them. I like a good hot dog, maybe 2, but not hundreds. How did you do in the hot dog eating contest?
Well, see, I had watched those hot dog eating contests, and you watch how they'll eat the hot dog itself, and then you have to eat the bun for it to count, right? So what those guys do, the pros, they dip the bun in water because it makes it easier to get it down because that starchy bread, it's hard to get that down. It takes too long. So I tried to do that, and I dipped the bun in the water, and it triggered a gag reflex. I could barely get it down. That wet bread, I hate that feeling. So I think I ate 1 and maybe a half of a hot dog. So I didn't do too well.
I didn't do too well. I'm glad you didn't do too well. I'm getting nauseous just thinking about it, to be honest with you. Okay, Third question as we round the bases. You talked about batching all that content together. Before you and I were going on, you were talking about stuff on the whiteboard. I mean, you're constantly you're constantly working, you're constantly creating. How has that changed, if at all, for you in a world where everyone's creating now? I know that I'm speaking in very simple terms.
Yes.
You were doing this before anyone else was. People are waking up every day thinking about their content. And when I say people, I mean a lot of people in every type of profession.
Right.
Professionals, non-professionals. Some of it's just for fun. Some of it is for business. Some of it, and everybody's exploring this. Like I said before, the highest level influencers, I'm just talking about that. They're outliers. People now suddenly say, I want to be an influencer. And everybody's looking for that one viral moment, which means that people are throwing a lot of crap at the wall. How have you evolved to that world changing and also the constantly changing algorithms? How have you managed all of this?
Great question, Joel. So first of all, I've never had anything go viral. I've published 30,000 pieces of content, never had anything go viral. Now, I do have some content that's over 1 million, engagements, views, whatever, but those things happen over time. It took time for those to build up. So for me, it's just about continually plugging away. So I don't really pay that much attention to the algorithms, even though some social media expert probably tell me I should. All I do is just make sure that we are continually putting material out. And I look at it as building a library, because there's going to come a time in the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years when the indexing on the internet can also start indexing audio and video as well as it does text. And that's going to change the game when it comes to, let's say, findability, or SEO for people who know that world, but just making yourself more findable. They'll be able to listen to an episode like this right here and get every single word that's being said. And those words will be searchable, not just the title of the episode. And that right now is just the title. But when audio can be indexed and video can be indexed, it's going to change the whole game for everybody, and up to and including people like myself. So I just focus on putting quality stuff out there. And even if you don't find it today, you'll find it next week.
You know, what I'm hearing in the simplest form is you continue to play the long game. And a lot of people play the short game because since the beginning of time, people want the quick fix, right? But it's playing the long game. There's such a good message there. Okay, last question. My walk-off. Oh, should I go? I'll do 2 parts just because I want to do something fun, but then I've got the serious question. So part A to the walk-off is you still got game?
In basketball?
Yeah.
Well, the skills never leave you. I can't jump. I'm probably not going to dunk the basketball right now. And I wouldn't even try to play because basketball is a game of agility. So I wouldn't even try. But someone who's never really played, I could beat them. Yes.
All right. That was the non-serious question because I know the competitor still, that's always got to be there. But the serious question on the walk-off here, and I want to let everybody know too, and we'll have it in the show notes, the website, dreallday.com, DREALLDAY, just like it would sound, dreallday.com, to learn about everything that we've been talking about. What's on your bucket list in terms of business, in terms of like grand scheme? What's something that you haven't done yet that you want to do that you're going to do?
I would give people workonyourgameuniversity.com better than Dre all day. First thing, Joel. Okay. And then the other thing is, my answer to that is I want work on your game to be the just do it of personal and professional development, which it just becomes ubiquitous. So just like Xerox copy or a Kleenex, and work on your game. That people already know what it means, know what it's about, know who it is as soon as they hear the phrase. So that's the goal.
Workonyourgameuniversity.com.
Correct.
Is the website. We will have that in the show notes. And this is coming from a guy that works on his game every single day and is trying to help everybody else do that as well. Dre, it's been a lot of fun to cover everything that we did, the incredible journey that you have had in your career, beginning before the career on the basketball court in the park at 14 years old, and now doing everything that you're doing. Really appreciate you spending time today. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me on, Joe. I appreciate you sharing your platform for the opportunity.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.